To break free of the delusional beliefs encoded in the stories that define and direct human lives is a great challenge and a wonderful opportunity. The strands of a different story about humanity weave through imagination like threads on a loom. But how does the weave reveal a coherent design? The decisive shift for humanity today is not only a change of events, but a change in how events are told, a new adventure in myth-making. Greetings to all who care and dare to listen. This is JLL recording on the 17th of April, 2018, and I'm calling this talk Introducing MOMMIE, M-O-M-M-I-E. Now this is a kind of solo talk, and I had said that I was not going to do solo talks anymore. Fortunately now, and happily for me, I have the opportunity to do conversational talks on Radio Gaianim. But at the moment I'm on my own, and I thought I would make an exception to the rule of no more solo presentations on the internet. My purpose in doing so is simple, and as you know, I always like to state my purposes and my pretenses right out in the open, so that you can know from the outset where I'm coming from, and you can choose if you want to come along with me or not. In a nutshell, the purpose of this talk is orientation. I'm reaching out to those of you who have taken an interest in the Superlearning Event. There's a Facebook page recently established on that topic. Also those of you, 2,500 or more, who belong to the JLL public group on Facebook, for what that's worth. Now I don't care much for Facebook, but if it serves you out there as a networking tool and as a kind of para-educational platform to pursue your interest in the matters that I teach, well, there you go. Use it as you will. At the same time that Facebook might be valuable to us, and other online media might be valuable in promoting the Sophianic message of Gnosis today, that is, the living Gnosis of this moment, there are other platforms and other means of communication and other structures of learning in preparation, and one of them is, of course, Nemitta, the School for Sophianic Arts and Sciences. So I'm going to orient you to Nemitta and to what is currently happening with my delivery, as I used to call it, on the internet. Just kick back for a moment and consider some of these terms. Sophianic Animism, Planetary Tantra, the Terma of Gaia Awakening, the Superlearning Event, the Calico War Party, Sophia's Correction. Now those are just a few terms. The list could be expanded. And what do those terms indicate? To what do they refer? Well, quite simply, they refer to aspects or dimensions of Gnosis today, the living Gnosis. Gnosis can be defined in various ways, and it can be misdefined and described in misleading and deceitful ways as well. So I advise you to look closely at anyone who uses the word gnosis or Gnostic. take a good look at where they're coming from and scrutinize with care the definition that they give you of gnosis. The definition that I use is gnosis is the totality of what you can know innately and intuitively according to how you are designed to know. As I said at the beginning of the Gnostic investigation of the Mandela effect, the Gnostic teacher, the telestes, teaches you according to the way your mind is designed to learn. That's what a true Gnostic does. So no one can claim to be a Gnostic if they do not address that design. So what is the design of human intelligence? Do those self-styled gurus or commentators on esoteric matters and the ancient mysteries that you can access on the internet today, do they know how the human mind was designed to learn? Do they know the origin of the human creature? The anthropos, the anthropine species, what do they know about it? Gnosis is also the true art and science of direct and empathic involvement in what you know. Now, there are other people commenting on gnosis on the internet, people talking about the mysteries, about the initiation ceremonies they suppose to have taken place in various temples and megalithic sites around the world. There are people who comment on the Nag Hammadi teachings, on the Nag Hammadi writings extensively. How am I different from any of them? How are my commentaries different from theirs? How are they any better? Or are they any better? Just let me make two quick points before I get to the real purpose of this talk, which is to review something I wrote 14 years ago with the aim of orienting you to what is happening today. First, just let me make this point about myself. I've never said this before in exactly these terms, and I'm happy to be able to say it today. When you regard other teachers, writers, authors, researchers who discuss the mysteries and gnosis or Gnosticism, you will find that they differ from me in two respects. I would say, at the risk of being arrogant, but what is a Gnostic teacher if not arrogant? Two outstanding respects. In the first respect, you will find that those teachers and commentators do not tell you if they themselves are currently in the practice of gnosis. They comment on gnosis, they tell you how to view it, they give you their interpretations of what it was, but do they tell you what system of gnosis they practice actually today, currently? Do they? Or do they have a system of gnosis? Or do they have a system of spiritual practice, if I might use that term? What is their spiritual practice today? I tell you what mine is openly. Do they tell you what theirs is? Second outstanding point, apart from the transparency I just described, that distinguishes me from other people talking about these matters, is this. What do they produce in the form of original material and instruction, original discovery, and higher education of the human species out of their own innate talent and genius? What do they produce? What do they originate? Everyone that I know, that I've ever heard on the internet or read in books, who's commenting on the ancient mysteries, or Gnosticism, or the Nag Hammadi writings, or the Hermetics, or the Neoplatonic philosophers such as Plotinus and Proclus, or the Hermetic Renaissance philosophers such as Ficino or the Blavatskyan narrative elaborators, and so forth and so on. Everyone who comments on these esoteric and arcane matters and who purports to tell you what they're all about and to enlighten you and educate you on these matters are simply commenting and commentating. Is that the word? Commentating? They are simply acting the role of commentators. But commentators do not originate anything. So I stand by my claim of the two outstanding features of my work, which is exemplary of how I live my life: transparency and originality. And as MC Hammer famously said, well, you know the line. So I'm coming to you from that viewpoint on myself. This is how I regard myself. And I'm coming to you today with a message of orientation and also a message of appreciation for your involvement so far. Now, if you're involved in the Sophianic message so far, I'm here to tell you that it's a treat, as you know. It's rich, it's profound, it's life-changing, and it's coming to the point of a really steep curve in the road, or a steep learning curve, if you want to call it that. So my purpose today is to orient you on this steep bend in the learning curve. You know, the Romantics had an idea, I've spoken of it often. The Romantics had a meme, or theme, which goes by the title, by the phrase, the education of the human race. I modify that slightly. I would call it the higher education of the human race. And that romantic motif, that romantic undertaking, was a failure, as I've explained many times, due to the fact that the Romantics, who wished to educate and guide humanity toward its true potential, were unable to do so for a number of reasons, but mainly because they lacked the Sophianic narrative. Well, the Sophianic narrative has been restored now since 2006, even earlier, since 2002, 2004. And so the project of the higher education of the human race can now be resumed, and it can be carried forward in ways that the Romantics could not possibly have ever conceived. Sophianic Animism, Planetary Tantra, the Terma of Gaia Awakening, the Superlearning Event, the Calico War Party, Sophia's Correction, these are all accessory concepts that belong to that great undertaking, the higher education of the human race. But wait, it gets even better. Because this educational process is truly that. It is truly a drawing forth, that's what education means, of that which is innately in you as a human animal, as an anthropine, and a magical child of the wisdom goddess. The education doesn't come entirely from outside. The education is the activation of what you have within you. What you know, what you can imagine, what you can create, what you can dream and make real, and also what you can overcome, what you can and must overcome. So all of these activities that I just named are, of course, dimensions of my life work. Am I the origin of them? Well, yes and no. Because those dimensions of knowledge and experimentation and creativity that I've defined come into this world by a tantric act of coupling, by a dyadic dynamic. I operate in a dyadic dynamic. I operate in a power sharing mode. I've said that Planetary Tantra is a pact of sharing power with the earth. In the course of the Gnostic investigation of the Mandela effect, I introduced the three-letter term PSI as a user-friendly term, an acronym that you might adopt. I introduced that because I know that at first sight, it is not always comfortable to take on the terms Wisdom Goddess, Earth Goddess, Aeonic Mother, Gaia Sophia, the Aeon Sophia, and the half-dozen other terms that I commonly use, and those in Planetary Tantra commonly use, to refer to the living presence and power of the planet Earth. Pam, the planetary animal mother. There are dozens of names for her, and certain of them are repetitively and routinely used in Planetary Tantra. But if you want to call all of that the PSI, meaning the plenary sovereign intelligence, then call it PSI. But remember that the PSI is the intelligence of an entity and an agency. It's not just some kind of intelligence that floats like data points in cyberspace. It is an incarnated agency of intelligence, the telluric matrix of the intelligence of the earth itself. That is the PSI. It's called plenary because it includes everything that occurs in the life of the earth and in the creatures who live upon the earth, and everything that occurs in the sea, in the oceans, in the atmosphere. So it is plenary. Plenary also refers back to the pleroma, because pleroma means a plenum, or something that is full and complete. It is sovereign because it has agency. The Aeonic Mother has agency as of August of 2016. And there you go. So use the PSI acronym if you're comfortable with that. But as you do so, bear in mind that that designation means nothing unless you are capable to bring your mind, your heart, and all of your senses to the act of recognition that the earth is alive and becoming interactive with the human species in a particular and unparalleled way. Sophia's correction. The divine experiment on earth has been hacked by the archontic forces, and the divine experiment on earth has been taken in a direction that was not compatible with its original parameters, nor is it compatible with the true nature and creative potential of the human animal. And so a correction is at hand. That correction began after a 3-year period of reset that ended in March of 2014. So now, March of 2018, what does that come to? 4 years of Sophia's correction, which is equivalent to about 13 seconds of her time. What's happening right now is that Sophia's correction is beginning to really get some tread. It's building up a tremendous head of steam, and it's gaining force and direction and definition in a remarkable way. Now, how would anybody even know that? Well, in the first place, you have to have a genuine Gnostic teacher who puts the event on the map, or who maps the event in a way that your mind can grasp. The role of the Gnostic teacher, Telestis, is the same as the role of the Nagual in experimental shamanism. The role of the Nagual is to define syntax and steady the approach to the unknown. The gift of the Nagual is freedom. So, there has to be initially an inceptor. There has to be someone who puts the event on the map so that you can follow it with the mapping powers of your mind, your imagination, your intelligence, and your empathy. That's been done. That's been done with the presentation of Planetary Tantra and the Terma of Gaia Awakening in the year 2008. Now what's happening is a rising momentum of Sophia's correction due to the human participation that has accrued to it in the last 10 years. There is a considerable but not measurable degree of human engagement in Sophia's correction now. Her correction is an interactive process. Everyone who recognizes this concept, this tremendous and unique notion of Sophia's correction, can become an instrument of that correction. You do so by coupling your power, your creative power, and your gifts and talents with the designs and purposes of the wisdom goddess. That coupling process, which is a tantric process of Maithuna, is the technique that I have used to produce this material in the first place. And it is the same technique that you use in order to take it on and develop it on your own terms, but rigorously within the parameters provided by the living gnosis. You can't just do anything with this intel. It's not an anything goes proposition, and it's not some kind of game of make-believe and magical thinking such as you see in the New Age or New Cage programs and propaganda. Be clear on that. So, consistent with my intention here today to orient you to the Superlearning Event, I want you to know that the Superlearning Event is something that is not only happening in your life, but get this, even more so, even more truly so, it is something that is happening to your life. And it is something that is happening to the life of the human species. However, it does not necessarily follow that every single member of the human species is going to know what is happening. So I'm going to introduce to you today a concept which is central to Planetary Tantra. The timing of this talk is consistent with the concept. How so? Well, today, April 17th, is the second day of the shift of Bhudevi and Tara, according to the correlation of the lunar cycles to the 13 zodiacal constellations. Now, this practice of observing the lunar cycles as they indicate the frequencies or shifts of different Shakti Dakini powers of the Earth Mother is a central practice of Planetary Tantra, and it is not difficult to learn. All the essentials of Planetary Tantra are going to be available for free through Nemitta in the future, Planetary Tantra will always be free. The core teachings and practices, the core method of which I'm going to speak today, will always be free. The Superlearning Event involves or can be regarded as the eruption of the inherent genius of the human species and the long suppressed powers of creativity in the human animal that have not been able to come to their true potential due to the problems with the divine experiment. Now that correction is underway, it is the moment to seize this opportunity of the Superlearning Event. Those who do so self-select into Sophia's correction. This notion of self-selection has been inherent to Planetary Tantra since the Terma came to the world in August of 2008. Those in the practice who look at the constellations and read the sky, which is an essential practice you need to do in order to master the data operating system of human imagination, well, this practice involves associating different themes and motifs with those Shakti powers, Shodashi, Idris, Vudasi, Tara, Bhudevi, and others, associating themes and topics with them, correlating them to the 9 muses, and at the same time following the day-by-day and month-by-month unfoldment of those powers. By undertaking this practice, which is common to the Superlearning Event and to Planetary Tantra, you self-select into Sophia's correction. Those who do not self-select into Sophia's correction do not participate in her correction as elective agents, although they may be drawn into the power of her correction in other ways. But to be an elective agent, a self-appointed agent, if you will, you must undertake these practices. So those of you who've come into the Superlearning Event, and I see you signing up on the Facebook page, I'd like you to understand what you're getting into here. Eventually, you're coming into the heart of Planetary Tantra. You may recognize that also as the genre of Sophianic Animism. So there's a Facebook page for Sophianic Animism as well. Why do you have these different concepts? They're simply facets of a single jewel, which is the jewel of the Terma of Gaia Awakening, which has primarily 5 facets, and so it is called the Chintamani, or the wish-fulfilling gem of 5 facets. So I'm making this special and exceptional orientation talk today at the beginning of a new Dakini shift. You identify the shift by the appearance of the crescent moon in the sky, and by other factors as well. Generally, though, the moon is the teacher of the Superlearning Event, just as Jupiter is the teacher of the events that are due to unfold across the entire world in the course of Sophia's correction. So the moon is at your service in this practice, and the moon is your teacher. So as I speak, the moon is emerging from its dark moment, the dark of the moon, when it passes between the earth and the sun and is not visible. And as the moon emerges, it appears as the sunset crescent in the evening sky against the background of certain star patterns. And so the constellation where it appears identifies the Dakini or Muse, who is on shift for that lunar month of 29 days. So for the current shift, there's an exceptional situation It involves the constellation of the bull. And with the bull, there is an exceptional case of two Dakini or Shakti powers, two Mahavidyas, associated with that constellation. One of them is Bhudevi, which means simply the earth goddess. Bhu, B-H-U, is the Sanskrit word for the earth, and Devi means a divine or radiant emanation. The earth goddess, Bhudevi, and Tara. Now Tara is known in Planetary Tantra in her specific manifestation as the wrathful green Tara, and you can call her the selector. Tara is associated specifically with the star Aldebaran in the eye of the bull. You can say that that star is like a beam, a powerful cosmic beam that selects from the great mass of humanity living on earth those who are to be participants in Sophia's correction. So it is a great paradox, and it is a quandary, and it is a wonder to understand that you select and you are both selected. You both select and are selected. There's a line in Parzival of Wolfram von Eschenbach, quote, "The Grail selects its own," end quote. So mysteriously, there is a process of selection and self-selection that occur simultaneously and complement each other. And those processes come under the watchful guidance of the wrathful green Tara, the selector. By contrast, the earth goddess, Bhudevi, who belongs to the circle of the 10 Mahavidyas as well, is associated, or may be associated, with the magnificent open star cluster of the Pleiades. The Pleiades represents the manifold richness of the aesthetic magnitude of cosmic beauty. The magnitude of cosmic beauty and the magnitude of telluric or earthly beauty and the magnitude of the beauty of the anthropine species and all species that live in the dreaming of the planetary animal mother. The Pleiades, a magnificent open star cluster located on the back of the neck of the constellation of the bull. So I speak to you today from a knowledge of the sky writing, and I speak to you as a reflection and extension of that writing. I speak to you in conformity with the eruption of those aspects of Sophia's intelligence that present themselves through the cycles of the moon. Moon is your teacher. Your campus is Nemitta. And the campus of Nemitta is your life. Nemitta is not an online event. I've said this before, and when it gets up and running, perhaps in the course of this lunation, or down toward the end of it, when the launch occurs, you need to know from the outset that Nemitta is the online portal to an in-life event that you yourself carry forward. You don't just go to the University of Nemitta. You don't just go to the School of Sophianic Arts and Sciences. You run the school at the same time that you attend it. Does that tell you something about the nature of the Superlearning Event? Well, I certainly hope so, because I don't think I could say it any better than that. Now let me come to the title that I've given to this orientation talk. Introducing MOMMIE. M-O-M-M-I-E. Well, what is MOMMIE? Well, MOMMIE is an acronym, and every letter of the word stands for something. So here goes. Listen closely. you begin with MO. Now, MO stands for method of. But you could equally say that MO stands for Modus Operandi. Remember, Modus Operandi rhymes with lotus candy, but it ain't the kind of lotus candy that puts you to sleep. It's the kind of lotus candy that wakes you up to the dream in which you are living, so that you become conscious that the dreamer is going lucid and wants to contact you. MO stands for modus operandi. The term is used in criminology. What is the MO of a certain perpetrator? You can also use that term in esoterics and in the Gnostic investigation of what's wrong with the divine experiment. Well, you can ask the question, what is the MO of the human perpetrators of the scheme of master deceit and domination on this planet? What is their MO? And what is the MO of those who are in Sophia's correction? That's where you are now. That's where you come. That's where you may place yourself and place your life. And here is exactly what that MO consists of. It consists of memory, mood, and ideation, entrainment. M-M-I-E. The final E of MOMMIE stands for a really, really powerful word. And that word is entrainment. I strongly advise you to think of that word, or try to bring that word to your mind in the morning when you wake up, and make that word and the concept and idea cued by that word, entrainment, make that the initial motif of your day. Just sit and think a little bit about entrainment. Just muse on it for a moment. What is entrainment? Well, there could be, obviously, many examples of entrainment that I might give. There are some extremely nefarious examples of entrainment. Those who are hooked to their iPads or iPods or Android telephones are in a state of entrainment to the archontic media. Children who sit in front of television and become captivated by the flicker rate and watch the hideous content that is broadcast through that screen are in a state of entrainment. Jews who pray at the Wailing Wall and bob their heads while they repeat prayers that are written in pieces of paper contained in the phylacteries that are strapped to their heads, are in a state of entrainment. Children in the Muslim schools, I forget what they're called, the madrasis, who likewise are forced to repeat and recite passages from the Quran, are in a state of entrainment. Wow, many, many examples could be given, and of course, most of those examples, which have been studied and discussed widely on the alternative media, on the internet, are nefarious and harmful. But when you muse on the notion of entrainment, I want you to take into account the possibility that entrainment is absolutely essential to the higher trajectory and higher education of the human species, that there is such a thing as, no, there is a process, it's not a thing, Get your act together here, Lash. There is a process of entrainment that bonds you to the mind and emotion and memory of the planet itself, the MMI. To be entrained to the MMI, to the memory, mood, and ideation of your planetary mother. That is the highest desire of everyone who comes to Sophianic Animism and Planetary Tantra. So hold to your highest desire. To be entrained, make it your highest desire. To be entrained. And the moon is your teacher of the planetary code. And Jupiter is Thelete, the guru, and the guide to Sophia's correction. Know that. Know those simple facts. I call them facts. How can I call them facts? Well, they're facts of life to me, folks, and not just me. They are the facts of the living gnosis today. When you are in the practice of Planetary Tantra, when you observe the Terma of Gaia Awakening, you don't have to wonder anymore in an idle and speculative manner. You can wonder for real. You don't have to guess anymore. You don't have to engage in magical thinking and make-believe. You can really know. And if you really want to know, then that desire to know will show you how deep is your love. How deep is your love for the source of life that puts the breath in your lungs as you hear me speak, that pumps the blood through your veins, that supports the osmosis across the membranes of every cell in your body. As I speak, as you listen, how deep is your love for that force? And how deep is your love for learning? The love to know her. And to know her is to love her. That's gnosis. The Superlearning Event is a process of entrainment that you voluntarily undertake. And it's a course of learning in which you engage the memory, the mood, and the ideation of the planet itself, of the Aeon, Sophia, who is present to you in material immanence in the sensorial body of the earth, no matter what its shape may be. Remember that PAM, which stands for Planetary Animal Mother, could also stand for Planetary Amoebic Mass. The other day, just yesterday in fact, the first day of the shift, I was sitting on Charlotte's Ridge, and I had some reflections about planetary mitosis, if you don't mind me saying so. Now, I'm not going to share those reflections right now, but I can assure you that if you can open your mind and expand your imagination to the concept of planetary mitosis, then you might be in for a really big thrill someday soon. But don't imagine it as a material splitting of the material body of the earth. No, that's not correct. The earth is not going to crack into two parts. Having said that, I must point out that there's some amazingly massive cracks appearing in the surface of the earth. Did you know that? Since correction in 2014. And one of these cracks, which is the biggest of all, is following the fault line of the Rift Valley in Africa, in Kenya. The Rift Valley, which is falsely associated with the Lucy discovery and some bogus scientific narrative of the origins of humanity. Nevertheless, the Rift Valley is a remarkable place, and it extends all the way northward from Africa to terminate, guess where? At the Dead Sea. And right now, there is a massive crack occurring along the tectonic lines of the Rift Valley. So if your attention needs to be brought to material events, geological and geographical events that point to a splitting process, well, there's plenty of evidence for that, but that's not planetary mitosis. Nope. So I might get around to talking about what thoughts came to me as I was musing on Charlotte's Ridge the other day. But I'll leave that for now to come around to the conclusion of this orientation talk. You know, there's a saying in Planetary Tantra. It's one of the oral sayings. It doesn't come in the Terma, but it comes up all the time among people in the practice. This saying has its context in the notion of your highest desire. So one of the things you do in the practice of Planetary Tantra, as well as in the Superlearning Event, is to contemplate, well, what is your highest desire right here, right now? And the statement that such and such is my highest desire is a very powerful statement that you can make from time to time. There's a saying in Planetary Tantra that goes like this: hold to your highest desire and surrender its attainment, not precluding that it will be rendered to you by the power of the Shakti cluster. Now, that may sound like an odd saying. In fact, I know some people who have questioned the sense of that and rejected it, because it says to hold to something that you desire and at the same time surrender its attainment. But there's a trick in that proposition, and it's something that you can only come to realize by living it, by trying it out. You surrender the attainment, but you do not preclude the possibility that the attainment will be rendered unto you. You see, that proposition of Planetary Tantra is a formula of coupling, or the co-dynamic principle of Tantra. What you can attain in your life, you cannot attain on your own. What you can attain of your divine endowment given to you from the planetary animal mother depends on coupling your power with hers. How do you do that? You entrain yourself to her memory, to her moods, and to her ideation. The 9 muses are aspects of her memory. So by choosing a muse, just provisionally, it may change later on, but just by choosing a muse, you set up a ritualistic process in your own subconscious by which you entrain yourself to her memory. In that manner, you become capable of retrieving memories that belong to the species as a whole. They're not even your memories. They're memories of the anthropine species, which you, as an individual specimen, can retrieve and reactivate. And that is how the superlearning process unfolds. Entrainment to memory, one aspect. Entrainment to mood. Well, I'm speaking to you today in the mood of Bhudevi and Tara. I'm actually transmitting their mood because I'm in their mood. Why am I in their mood? Because every month I get in the mood of the mother for that month, and the moon teaches me how to entrain to her mood. The moon is the teacher of all of you who undertake this conscious and deliberate act of self-entrainment. Finally, ideation. What is the ideation of the planetary animal mother? Well, the Shakti cluster is like a console. It's like an instrument panel. And through those 18 modes of the Shakti cluster, or in particular through 16 of them, the planetary animal mother, the Aeon Sophia, is constantly broadcasting frequencies of ideation. She is broadcasting the wavelengths of her intelligence to the human animal. So what you learn in Planetary Tantra, what you learn by using the Shakti Cluster app, is how to log on and lock onto those ideational frequencies coming from the earth itself. The matrix of her intelligence is so vast that you cannot receive it in one frequency alone, in one band. She breaks it down into 16 bands, with 2 other bands that have a special function in stabilizing the entire console. That would be 17 and 18. Those bands stabilize the entire console of 16 bands through which the intelligence of the earth is broadcasting into your mind and body. It's a body-mind reception. It's called DI, or Dakini instruction. So Dakini instruction, Sophianic Animism, the Shakti Cluster app, the practices of Planetary Tantra, correlations of the Dakinis and Mahavidyas to the Muses, Superlearning Event, the Calico War Party, Sophia's correction. All of these concepts are not merely concepts. They are in fact descriptions of something that is happening to you if you select into Sophia's correction. Someone said to me the other day, and it was a wonderful relief, well, the way that I can answer the accusation that I'm a cult leader and that I'm starting a cult is this. Yeah, I am starting a cult. It's an educational cult. How about that? How do you like that definition? Planetary Tantra and Sophianic Animism is an educational cult. The Superlearning Event is the curriculum for education in this cult. This is not a cult of brainwashing. This is a cult of brain waking. This is a cult of entrainment to the divine powers that designed you and that sustain you at every moment of your life. So when you awake in the morning now, think of MOMMIE. Think of the Modus Operandi by which you entrain the memory, mood, and ideation of the earth itself. And see how that thought, how that morning contemplation draws you more deeply into the Superlearning Event. To begin this talk, I read a paragraph from something I wrote 14 years ago called Sharing the Gaia Mythos, and I'll provide the link to that long piece in the description. I'll conclude by reading an excerpt from that essay. It comes under the subheading of Divine Memory. Now, I offer this brief reading as a gesture of welcome and appreciation to those of you who are coming into the Superlearning Event. I realize some of you might be encountering my work for the first time through that channel. So, welcome aboard. Divine Memory. In the classical art and myth of the West, the Muse is a version of a primal deity called the Goddess of Memory. By invoking her, Virgil and other poets of antiquity acknowledged their reliance on a primal memory source for their feats of mythic recitation. They did not author myths, although they did craft a language for them. They were myth makers in the sense that they provided language for the mythos, but they did not make up the mythos all by themselves. They repeated what the Muse told them, and they relied on her version of events to indicate causality, moral order, purposefulness. Benefiting from her transpersonal input, ancient poets were able to fathom the causes of things past, decisive events in prehistory that led to known historical events. Thus, Virgil, author of the Aeneid in Latin, relates how the mythical adventures of Aeneas led to the historical founding of Rome in 747 BCE. Another famous invocation of the Muse occurs in the Works and Days, a cosmological poem attributed to Hesiod around 800 BCE. Quote, "Muses who from Pieria give glory through song, come to me and tell of Zeus, your own father." End quote. Of course, the reference here to Zeus is to a celestial father, and as you know, in Planetary Tantra and in the current course of correction, Zeus can be identified with Thelete and Jupiter. Here the poet refers to a tradition that describes 9 muses, the daughters of Mnemosyne. This rather daunting name is one of the most precious clues in our Western mythological heritage. The strange name persists as a mere trace in the modern word mnemonic, referring to devices or techniques used to assist memory. The plural, mnemonics, refers to any system for improving the memory. The name given to the goddess of memory relates to the Greek word mnemonikos, mindfulness or remembering, based on the Indo-European root mnema, to remember. The root of the word remember is thus the name of a mythical woman. If this association looks fantastic to us today, the ancient experience behind it is even more fantastic. If the antique poets are to be believed, the source of the act of remembering is a goddess, some kind of superhuman power conceived as feminine, capable of loading direct input into the human psyche. The muse is a divine supernatural entity who dictates to the receptive human instrument. According to the ancient poets of Europa, we can remember in a special way when the muse remembers for us and retells what she knows through us. Such is also the testimony of poets, bards, and shamanic storytellers from many cultures around the world. The origin of muse is uncertain, but it may derive from the same root as mont, meaning mountain. Partridge suggests the Indo-European base mende, found in meditation, and menthol, hence breathed or inspired. It is equally likely that muse relates to the Greek verb muein, to murmur or speak in undertones, as when imparting a secret. Muein is the source of such words as mystery, mystic, and mystify. With the insertion of the S, this root permutes to form amuse, bemuse, music, musician, museum. Hence, evidence of the muses occurs in many common words connected significantly with arts of leisure and pleasure, but also with instruction. On that note, I conclude this impromptu talk, and I advise you to read the indications in the description in order to know how to follow the Superlearning Event and stay on track with Planetary Tantra and the Telepathic Teacher in the days to come.